Tonight, we revisit a chapter in our nation's history that still stirs debate, the 1970 mutiny at Teteron Barracks. Raffique Shah recently penned an article defending the actions of the 1970 mutineers, portraying them as principled, peaceful revolutionaries. He further criticized Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar for endorsing the recent U.S. military strike on Venezuelan narco-traffickers, accusing her of bloodlust. But what really happened at Teteron? And how do we reconcile that past with the stark realities of today's security threats? Well, joining us live is retired Rear Admiral Richard Kelshall, who served as second in command of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard during the mutiny and played a key role in containing the threat. Admiral Kelshall, welcome to TTT.
Thank you very much. It's a big honor.
Well, I want to get right into it this evening. You know, Mr. Shah has described the mutineers as calm, restrained, and even reluctant to kill. From your vantage point, on that day, how accurate is that portrayal?
Well, to put it frankly, it's nonsense. There's no way you can become a mutineer or a revolutionist, he self-proclaimed himself as that, with not wanting to kill people. And in fact, people died. And as far as I'm aware, Mr. Shah has never once apologized to the nation or his regiment for the damage he did.
He has said that the decision to retreat from Teteron was always based on a moral refusal to take lives. Was that really a choice, or were the mutineers neutralized by superior firepower or even strategic positioning of, for example, the Coast Guard?
Well, that's a very good question that you put to me. The fact is, I think Mr. Shah forgot that I'm still alive. I was there. I was called by Captain David Bloom, who was the commanding officer of the Coast Guard, and told, you must take a ship, take the Trinity and go off the hillside and stop a mutinous convoy coming down the hill. You can imagine the shock and awe that I felt on receiving such a command. And I was very rude, and I said to him, "Sir, you're the CEO, why don't you go?" And he said to me, "I'm an Englishman, and it's better if somebody from Trinidad carries out this duty."
So you're talking about an order that was given to you to basically shell the mountains at Teteron, correct? Yeah. So, and that is if the mutineers did not surrender the ammunition at the time, correct?
Well, it wasn't a question of ammunition. This was a full convoy of 3 companies of soldiers that were embarked on a trip to town. What the country doesn't know is that there were some 200 spare rifles, 1,000 hand grenades, and a lot of ammunition in that convoy. What was it going to town for? And why did it have all that ammunition if they wanted to kill nobody?
So let me ask you this. We're talking about what was happening at the time with the Black Power movement back in 1970. And mind you, for all of our viewers, at that time, there was a state of emergency happening, which was given from the Prime Minister at the time, Eric Williams. You know, that order that you were given was a very extreme measure. What does that say about how serious this threat was viewed by you and others?
It was terrifying. The fact is that I had never commanded a Coast Guard ship before. And this was a horrific way for a young officer to get command. But the captain of the Trinity was not at the Coast Guard headquarters at the time. Our Coast Guard aircraft was flying overhead and saw the convoy coming up the hill, and that was relayed to the Coast Guard Ops Center, and Captain Bloom sent for me when he was told there was no captain for the ship. And I have to give him his credit, and that is while I was walking away, he called me back. And I remember his words clearly. He said, "Rich, try and don't kill too many people."
I see. So since then, 20 years later, Trinidad and Tobago faced another uprising, quite similar, but this time there was an identified threat, the 1990 coup with the Jamaat al-Muslimin. So we've seen both challenges where the authority of the state was challenged and tested, given what was happening with the Defense Force. So what I want to find out, you know, there have been numerous individuals, for example, Captain Gary Griffith would have come out within the last few years and said that there was a clear position that he stands with. These acts are acts of betrayal, they are not bravery, and those who breached military oaths, they should not be celebrated, basically. They should be remembered as traitors and not as role models. So in today's climate, how crucial is the professionalism and also the political neutrality of our military and our protective services?
Well, the regiment went through a very bad state after this attempted mutiny, and it destroyed its morale, it destroyed its pride in itself, and we ended up hearing rumors that the army should be disbanded. It was a terrible time in the history of the Defense Force, but the army persisted, and we have an army that proved itself now, coming forward to 1990. The army saved the nation in 1990, and so it pulled itself back together despite Mr. Shah and ended up saving the country in 1990. I know I was commanding the Coast Guard at the time.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about Shah's morality versus that modern security policy that is being debated at this time. In Shah's article, he criticizes Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar for supporting the recent U.S. military strike on Venezuelan narco-terrorists. And he went as far as calling her reeking of a bloodlust. You were once tasked with stopping an armed convoy from storming the capital. Do you see the Prime Minister's endorsement at this time of an anti-cartel action as comparable to or different from the choices that you had to face in 1970?
That's a very complex question. Let's start with Mr. Shah's comments. He has no knowledge whatsoever of drug trafficking, drug smuggling. He was an army subaltern at the time when he was in the army, and he has no knowledge of what it takes. We have to understand that this is a very serious matter, and that in Venezuela there's a gang called the Trinidad, forgive my Spanish, which is reputed to have 27,000 members. If we combine all our protective services together, we can't come up with 10,000 people. And for us to think that we could handle such a threat 20 minutes away by boat, it's only 8 miles between Venezuela and here. The fact that the United States of America has seen this and has deemed it fit to act, and Trinidad's name has been called in Washington and all over the world as where the drugs are headed for. These people deal in narcotics. Where they're narcotics, they're guns. Where they're guns, they're terrorists. And when the three get together, there's mayhem. And I think the Prime Minister, quite rightly, has seen the danger there. And there's no place to be nice here. You have to call a spade and call it what it is. We're fighting a dangerous situation. In fact, right now, Trinidad and Tobago is a country under siege. People can't feel safe coming out of their houses. You can't feel safe walking in the road. These young gang members are shooting people in broad daylight without masks. And who knows what the influence is coming across the water from Venezuela. They once brought a delivery of guns and drugs into Cedros Bay. And when I was called to the scene, there was a bucket of 7.62 ammunition left on the beach. They forgot that. If you could forget a bucket of ammunition, how much came in? And that's the kind of stuff that's going on along the coast here, and we need help. And I think it is very, very good that America stepped forward. But let's make something clear. This is not the first time. In 1970, in the action we just talked about, the United States had the Third Fleet off the North Coast with the U.S. Guadalcanal and its escort destroyers and whatnot. It was right off the North Coast. In fact, there's rumors that they even came ashore. Also the British had 2 frigates off the North Coast. It has always been that America has stepped in to help us when we were in trouble. And as far as bloodthirst and a lust for blood, 30-something years ago, I used to deal with the generals in Venezuela about drug smuggling and whatnot, and they cautioned me several times that any vessel from Trinidad that didn't carry a flag or had a registered number, they would burn down. Those are the words they use, without doubt. America has rules under international laws about piracy and stateless vessels. And America is very right in doing what it's doing. And we need the help. There's no doubt about that.
Well, Admiral, we are a bit pressed for time, but it sounds like you are saying that leaders are in fact justified for taking that hard line in transnational threats, even at the risk of causing civilians discomfort. What I want to ask you as we wrap this up is, what are the core lessons that you think today's military and political leaders should take from your experience in 1970 and apply to the challenges we have today?
Well, you have to take immediate steps. I think Trinidad and Tobago hasn't yet realized the dangers facing it and the bad situation that we're in. And we have a new democratically elected Prime Minister who is bold, who is prepared to tell it like it is and call a spade, and the nation ought to get together behind her and follow her to fight this thing. It will need everybody, every citizen in the country. If you see something, say something. We need help. Trinidad needs help, which is why I'm here.
All right, Rear Admiral Richard Kelshall, we want to thank you so much for your service and for helping us understand these events in greater depth as we navigate today's battles against cartels, against misinformation, and even against historical amnesia. Your insight, of course, reminds us what's truly at stake.